I never thought I would be the one telling this story. My name is Michael Reynolds, and up until the day I died, I lived like any ordinary person, busy with life, unaware that my time was running out. But the moment I took my last breath, my reality changed forever. I crossed into a realm I never imagined, a place beyond time where light and darkness clashed in ways human eyes could never comprehend. In the center of it all, I stood before Jesus Christ. His voice carried an authority that made the universe tremble. Yet his eyes held a love so that it stripped away every illusion I ever believed. What he revealed to me about the afterlife, the fate of souls, and the shocking truth of what happens when we die was unlike anything I had ever heard before. Some souls were at peace, others were tormented, and some were still bound to the earth, unaware of their true condition. Then Jesus told me something that shook me to my core. You must go back. Your mission is not complete. This is my testimony. This is what I saw when I died, and what I am about to share will challenge everything you think you know about life, death, and what comes after. My name is Michael Reynolds, and I never expected my life to end the way it did. It was an ordinary day, nothing unusual or out of the ordinary. I had my routine, my responsibilities, my thoughts preoccupied with the usual concerns of work, family, and the future. If someone had told me that this would be my final moment on earth, I would have laughed it off as nonsense. But fate, or something far beyond my understanding, had other plans. It happened so quickly, yet in my final moments, time seemed to stretch and slow down. There was no warning, no gradual transition. One moment, I was fully alive, my body responding to every heartbeat, every breath filling my lungs. The next, an unnatural stillness overtook me, a sharp detachment, as if I had been pulled out of a reality I once thought was permanent. I could hear, but not in the same way. I could see, yet my vision was unlike anything I had ever known. The sensation of leaving my body was both terrifying and strangely peaceful. I knew I was no longer bound by the laws of nature, yet I felt no pain, no weight holding me down. There was a fleeting awareness of my surroundings, as if I were hovering above, watching everything unfold. Below me, I could see my own form lying still, lifeless. People rushing, voices calling out, panic in the air. But their words sounded distant, like echoes from another dimension. Then an unexplainable force pulled me away, and my physical existence became a fading memory. A new reality opened up before me, one I had never encountered, but somehow recognized the journey had begun. And there was no turning back. A force stronger than anything I had ever known carried me away from the world I once belonged to. There was no resistance, no choice in the matter. It was as if an unseen hand had reached into the very core of my being and lifted me into something vast and unknown. My senses, though different, were sharper than ever. I was no longer confined by the limits of my physical body, yet I was fully aware, more aware than I had ever been in my earthly life. At first, there was darkness, not the kind that breathes fear, but a void of endless silence. I could not tell if I was floating or standing, if I had weight, or if I was nothing more than thought itself. There was no pain, no struggle, just a deep knowing that I had stepped into something beyond human comprehension. Time had no meaning here. I could sense everything, but could not grasp anything solid. Then out of the emptiness, something shifted. A presence made itself known. Not through sight, not through sound, but through an overwhelming sense of power. It was as if the very fabric of existence trembled before it. A light far in the distance began to form. Not just any light, but one so pure, so impossibly brilliant that it seemed alive. It did not shine like the sun, nor did it blind. It was warm, inviting yet terrifying in its magnitude. The pull toward it was undeniable, like being drawn by the very essence of life itself. As I moved closer, I felt something within me, layers of what I once was peeling away. Every earthly attachment, every doubt, every fear seemed to dissolve. The weight of my existence was nothing in comparison to what lay ahead. The light before me expanded, growing in intensity without overwhelming me. It wasn't just brightness. It carried a presence, something far beyond human understanding. It was as if the very source of life, of truth itself, stood before me. I could feel its power, yet there was no fear, only an undeniable awareness that I was in the presence of something greater than anything I had ever known. My soul recognized it before my mind could fully process what was happening. Then he appeared not in the way I had seen in paintings or imagined, in fleeting moments of faith. This was real, more real than anything I had ever encountered. Jesus Christ stood before me, and in an instant I knew who he was. There was no need for introduction. No doubt in my mind he radiated authority. Yet his presence was unlike anything I could have expected. Immense, powerful, yet full of mercy. His eyes were unlike any human eyes I had ever seen, burning with a depth that saw into the very core of my being. I could not speak, nor did I need to. He already knew everything about me. Every thought, every action, every hidden part of my soul laid bare before him. I expected judgment or reckoning of my failures, my regrets, but what I felt instead was overwhelming love. A love so pure, so absolute, that it stripped away every pretense, every illusion I had clung to in life. His voice, when he spoke, was unlike any sound I had ever heard. It carried a weight that resonated through every part of me. It was not just heard, it was felt, absorbed into my very essence. And with that first word, everything I thought I knew about life, death, and eternity began to shatter. The moment Jesus spoke, the entire reality around me shifted. His voice wasn't just a sound. It was a force and undeniable truth that resonated deep within my soul. It was as if every word carried the weight of reaching into the very core of my being and unraveling everything I once believed. There was no deception here, no room for misunderstanding. This was absolute truth, unfiltered and undeniable. He told me what happens immediately after death, how the soul is drawn according to the condition of its heart. It was not about mere actions, not about how many good deeds a person had done, but about the state of their soul at the moment they left the earth. He showed me that the transition was not the same for everyone. Some entered into peace, some into darkness, and others lingered in a place between. Unable to move forward, I saw souls who had passed on, their destinies determined by the choices they had made while living. Some were surrounded by radiant light, enveloped in a love so that no earthly suffering could compare. Others were bound in shadows, trapped in a torment that was not inflicted upon but rather chosen by them, a state of separation from God that they had embraced in life, now continuing beyond the grave. Then he showed me something even more startling. There were those who were neither in light nor in darkness. These souls seemed lost, wandering, confused, as if they did not understand they had died. Some clung to the world, unwilling to let go, tethered by unfinished business, by unresolved emotions, by an attachment to the physical life they no longer belonged to. They were aware, yet unaware, existing in a realm that was neither here nor there. A sudden shift occurred, and I was no longer standing in that radiant presence. Instead, I was surrounded by something indescribable: visions, memories, moments flashing before me with an intensity that felt more real than when they had first happened. It was as though my entire life was being played back, not just as a recollection, but as a complete experience. Every word I had spoken, every thought I had entertained, every action, whether hidden, unknown, was laid bare before me. I was not watching it from a distance. I was inside it, reliving it all at once. The joy, the pain, the regrets, the triumphs, every interaction, every decision, every moment where I had chosen kindness, and every time I had turned away when I should have shown love. I could feel it from the perspective of those I had affected. Every wound I had inflicted on another, whether through words, actions, or even neglect, I could now feel the weight of it as they had experienced it. Then something even more profound happened. I saw the moments I had completely forgotten, the times I thought were insignificant, yet they carried eternal weight. A simple word of encouragement I had given to someone in passing had lifted them from despair. A moment of selfishness had unknowingly caused nothing pain. Was hidden, nothing was lost in time. Everything I had done had left a mark, whether for good or for harm. I realized how every choice had rippled through the lives of others, affecting them in ways I had never considered. I had been blind to so much, and yet through it all, I felt no condemnation. There was sorrow, there was understanding, but there was also something else. An overwhelming sense of mercy, of love, of grace beyond comprehension. As the visions of my life faded, a new awareness took hold of me. The realm around me shifted, and I was no longer just an observer of my own past. I was being shown something far greater, something hidden from the eyes of the living. I saw a vast expanse stretching beyond what my mind could fully grasp. A battlefield unlike anything I had ever imagined. It was not made of flesh and blood, nor did it resemble the wars of men. This was a war fought in the unseen, a war waged over every human soul. I saw beings of immense power, some radiant and filled with a presence that resonated with the very of life itself. Others were dark, twisted, their forms shifting like shadows that could never hold shape. These were not myths or symbols. They were real. I could feel their presence as tangibly as I had felt the air in my lungs. While I was alive, the forces of light and darkness clashed in ways that defied earthly logic. Yet I understood with certainty that this war had always been raging, even when I had been unaware of it. I was shown how every soul was involved in this battle, whether they knew it or not. Every choice, every word, every belief pulled them toward one side or the other. Some were heavily guarded by celestial warriors, their prayers and faith creating barriers of light that the darkness could not penetrate. Others were surrounded by shadows, their hearts chained by deception, by bitterness, by choices that had aligned them with forces they did not even recognize. I saw how darkness worked, not through obvious horror, but through whispers, distractions, subtle deceptions that made people believe they were in control, while slowly leading them away from the truth. The battle was everywhere. It was constant. It was personal. The scene before me shifted again, and I became aware of something even more terrifying. I was shown the fate of those who had rejected truth, those who had spent their lives denying the reality of what lay beyond death. There were no arguments here, no philosophical debates, no bargaining or excuses. The time for that had passed. Now there was only the consequence of choice. I saw souls that had fallen into a realm of complete separation. They were not forced there. They had chosen it, though many had not realized the full weight of their decisions. Until it was too late, there was no fire, no demons with pitchforks, only an overwhelming emptiness, a void that could never be filled. The souls here were aware, fully conscious, yet utterly alone. They had rejected the source of life, and now they existed without it. Some cried out, not in physical pain, but in the agony of regret. They relived the moments they had ignored the truth, the times they had felt a pull towards something greater, but had brushed it aside. They had convinced themselves that none of this was real, that there was nothing beyond the physical world. Now standing in this endless separation, they knew the truth, but they could not change their decision. There were those who had spent their lives chasing after power, wealth, and selfish desires, only to find that everything they had valued was gone. Others had simply lived in different lives, never outright rejecting God, but never seeking Him either. They had assumed they were good enough on their own, never realizing that goodness, apart from the source of all was meaningless. I was not just seeing them. I was feeling their despair, their sorrow, their realization that they had traded eternity for the illusion of control in their fleeting time on earth. As I was shown the fate of the lost, my awareness was pulled elsewhere. I found myself witnessing something even more peculiar, something I had never fully considered in my time on earth. There were souls that had not moved on, spirits still tethered to the world they once lived in. They were neither in radiant light nor in the abyss of separation. They lingered. Some of them did not even realize they were dead. They roamed familiar places, trapped in an endless cycle of searching, reliving, or clinging to something they could not let go of. I saw them in homes, on streets, in places of significance, standing beside loved ones who could not see them. They would whisper, try to make their presence known, but no one could hear them. They did not understand why they were unseen, why their voices went unanswered. Others were fully aware of their condition, yet they refused to leave. They were bound by regret, by unfinished business, by emotions too strong to release. Some were weighed down by bitterness, holding on to offenses they had never let go of in life. Others were paralyzed by guilt, unable to move forward, feeling unworthy of light, yet unwilling to accept darkness. I saw places where darkness had gathered, where spirits wandered not by choice, but by deception. Some had been drawn into practices they did not understand in life, bound by rituals, by curses, by things they had invited in without knowing the cost. Some were being tormented, unable to break free from a reality they had unknowingly embraced. The living had no idea how many unseen souls existed around them, how many spirits still roamed watching, waiting, trapped in the space between the now and the eternal. As I stood in the midst of these revelations, a presence wrapped around me, overwhelming yet tender, vast yet deeply personal. It was the presence of Jesus. And in his gaze, I saw something that both shattered and restored me at the same time. Love, not the kind of love the world speaks of, conditional and fleeting, but a love so absolute that it transcended every failure, every mistake, every regret I had ever carried. It was not a love that ignored truth, nor was it a love that excused wrongdoing. It was a love that saw everything, every dark corner of the soul, every hidden wound, and still reached out, still offered mercy, still desired to restore what had been lost. I understood in that moment that love was not just an emotion. It was a force, a reality, more powerful than any law of nature. It was the very foundation of creation itself. I saw how mercy worked not as a dismissal of wrongs, but as an invitation to transformation. There was no sin too great, no past too broken, that could not be healed in the presence of this love. And yet, I also saw how rejection of love led to an existence without not punishment inflicted by an angry God, but the natural consequence of choosing to remain apart from the source of life. Then I was shown the true weight of forgiveness. I saw how every grudge, every wound that had not been released, acted as a chain binding souls to pain they were never meant to carry. Forgiveness was not just about setting others free. It was about freeing oneself from the burdens that kept the soul from ascending into peace. It was the key to stepping fully into the light. I became aware of something else, something that human minds could barely grasp. Time as I had always known it did not exist in the way we perceived it on earth. It was not linear, not bound by seconds, minutes, or years. It was fluid, shifting, expanding, contracting. I could sense events past and future happening all at once. Yet nothing felt rushed or chaotic. Everything was in perfect order, moving according to a divine rhythm. I saw how eternity was not a place with endless years stretching but rather forward, a state of being beyond time itself. In this realm, there was no aging, no waiting, no deadlines. A single moment held more depth than an entire lifetime. And yet, nothing ever felt like it was lost. Time did not pass, it simply was. Jesus showed me how the earthly perception of time was merely a shadow, a fragment of a much greater reality. On earth, people lived by the ticking of clocks, measuring days, months, and years, fearing the passing of time, chasing after things before their time ran out. But here time had no power. There was no past to regret, no future to fear, only the eternal now. Then I was shown something even more astonishing. Heaven and earth were not as far apart as I had once thought. The spiritual realm was not some distant, unreachable place beyond the stars. It was right here, existing alongside the physical world, unseen but deeply connected. The prayers of the faithful moved like waves through the fabric of eternity. Acts of love and kindness sent ripples through both realms. The choices people made in time had eternal consequences, shaping not just their own destinies, but the spiritual reality around them. Then came the moment I never expected. Jesus looked at me with an intensity that pierced through every layer of my soul. His gaze carried both authority and unspoken understanding of everything I had ever done. I felt exposed yet deeply known, stripped of all pretenses, yet held together by something greater than myself. I was waiting for finality, for some declaration that my journey had reached its end. Instead, what he said shook me to my core. "You must go back." The words carried a weight beyond comprehension, a truth that settled deep into my spirit before my mind could even process them. I didn't understand. I had thought this was the end, that my life had run its course that I had entered eternity. But Jesus made it clear this was not my time. There was something unfinished, something I had yet to do. I was not being sent back for myself, but for others. My purpose had not yet been fulfilled. In that instant, I saw glimpses of what lay ahead if I returned. Faces I had never met, places I had never been, moments that had yet to unfold. There were people who needed to hear what I had seen, lives that would be changed because of this experience. There were warnings to be given, truths to be spoken, things that could shift the course of souls still walking the earth. I wanted to argue, to plead for more understanding. But deep down, I knew this was not a choice. It was a commission. The same force that had drawn me into this realm was now preparing to send me back, carrying with me the burden of everything, and the responsibility to share it. The moment the words settled in my spirit, everything around me shifted. The vastness of eternity, the presence of Jesus, the weight of all I had seen. Suddenly, it all began to fade, not in the way a dream dissolves upon waking, but as if I were being pulled backward, drawn away from a place my soul had already begun to call home. I felt a force moving through me, pulling me out of the realm, beyond time and back toward the world I had left behind. There was no tunnel, no swirling lights, only a sudden and intense awareness of being reattached to the physical. A heaviness returned, a limitation I hadn't felt before. My body, which I had once thought of as my only true existence, now felt small, confining, like something I had outgrown, yet was being forced to wear again. I could hear muffled sounds, distant at first, then growing clearer voices, movement, urgency. Then came the first painful breath. My lungs, which had once ceased their function, suddenly expanded with air. I gasped, the burning sensation of returning life rushing through me like fire. I could feel my heart pounding, a rapid, desperate rhythm that reminded me I was back in a world of time, of limits, of mortality. Eyes I had closed to one reality now opened to another. Faces hovered above me, some in shock, some in awe, some whispering my name in disbelief. I had returned, but I was not the same. Everything I had known before had changed. The weight of what I had seen, what I had learned, what I had been sent back to share settled into my soul. I carried something now, an urgency, a message, a truth that the world needed to hear.